Welcome to Wadsworth History on Film, a program presented by the Wadsworth Area Historical Society and designed to record the oral history of Wadsworth for posterity. I'm Cesar Carino, your host, and our guest today is Wilma Dockus, who was at one time Wilma Houder. And my heavens, Wilma, you have so much history. Your parents were born here, and were your grandparents born here as well?
No.
They weren't, but your parents were born here. So do you have any real problem with telling us how many years ago you were born here?
81 years ago.
81 years ago. What is the date of your birth, Wilma?
January 31st.
January 31st, 1917. Mm-hmm. So that makes you 81 years of age. And your parents were born here. When were your parents born?
My father was born in 1890 in Wadsworth.
Mm-hmm. And he was who? Who was your father?
Fred Houder.
And who your grandfather was?
Martin Houder.
Martin Houder. So Fred Houder, the one that we all know from way back when, was your father, and your mother was?
Nita Wall.
Would you spell Nita for us?
N-I-T-A.
Nita Wall, W-A-L-L, related to the Walls here in town also, and the long family history there. We spell all of the names on this program, even though we know what they are, because we need to have, maybe 50 years from now, people won't know any of us. So it's H-O-U-D-E-R, D as in dog, Houder, H-O-U-D-E-R, and your father's first name was?
Fred.
Fred, F-R-E-D. Okay, and your mother's name was Nita. Tell us about brothers and sisters, too, then, that you might have had.
I had no brothers or sisters.
You were all by yourself?
Yeah, I was
all by
young.
yourself. Tell us a little bit about early Wadsworth days in 1917. Well, you probably didn't remember anything until about 1920 and 21, but tell us a little bit about what Wadsworth was like to you.
Oh, I liked to go downtown. I'd stop in at the grocery store.
Where were you living to go downtown?
505 High Street.
505 High Street. How did you get to how did you get to 505 High Street?
Well, I was born down South End, about 542 South Main Street.
On Main Street there.
And my father decided that he wanted a small farm.
Small farm.
And so this 5-acre property was available on High Street.
Who owned it, do you remember?
I don't remember anymore.
And where was it located geographically on High Street, Wilma?
It was the first block north of the Akron Road intersection.
Okay. It was probably close to the Nixon farm.
It was south of the Nixon farm.
Yes, right.
Yeah, our property, back door properties were close.
To the Nixon farm. And right now that would be the intersection of Route 94 and 261. Is that right?
Yes, that was a corner.
The northeast corner. The northeast corner of it. So we know geographically, because maybe 50 years from now we won't have anything up there except maybe a skyscraper or something. You never can tell.
Yeah.
Wilma, what are your first recollections of Wadsworth?
Well, my home, of course, I was very young when we moved into that house on High Street. And eventually, my father sold off the land on the corner of the Akron Road, and a family of Parkers moved in.
Parkers moved in. Do you remember which Parkers they were?
The father's name was Lucian.
Lucian Parker.
And there was a son, Edwin, and one Stanley, and a daughter, Laura. And Laura and I were very close together in age, and we became fast friends and always played together.
And there was a house there, a gas station is there right now.
Yeah.
But there was a house there, and that was the Parker house.
Yes, that was about a 3-story building house, which was later moved up the street and settled down just west of High Street. I don't know if you're familiar with that house or not.
West of High Street?
Yeah.
And what street is it on?
Oh, I can't remember the name of that street right now. It's just the first block off of High Street, and you make a little left.
Tolbert, maybe?
No, not that far up. It's Masonic Temple area. You make a turn there off of High Street. Make a left. make a left turn off of High Street and go to the bottom of that little hill and make another left, and that's where the
Longview and Valley, is that far up?
yeah, and that's where the the Parker house was situated in. It was moved.
I see. Okay. All right. So that would be up there close to where the Masonic Temple is now.
Yeah.
And the little street that you're talking about could be Longview? You think it might be Longview there?
I'm so familiar with it, and I don't even remember the name.
Oh, well, that's all right.
Yeah.
That's fine. But that's geographically,
Yeah.
that's where it is, right? But you stayed there where you were. Now, Fred, your father, was not born in the South End, was he?
No, he was born on Mill Street.
On Mill Street. And as a
Yeah.
matter of fact, I think we have a picture here of the old, yeah, here it is.
That house is still
Picture,
standing.
picture of the old Mill Street house, and the house is still there. Yeah, it's still there. It's on the corner of Mill and Lyman, or Pardee, isn't it?
Yes.
Mill and Pardee,
Pardee.
right. That's a good old picture, and we have horses. Did you remember the horses at all?
Just vaguely. I think that once in a while I get a ride in the wagon with the
You
horse.
got to ride in the wagon, the horse. Now, what did the Houders do in town?
The grocery store. of
Grocery
course.
store. Tell us where the grocery store was and who owned it and who started it.
Well, it was on Main Street, of course, and it was about the middle of the block.
On the west side of the road.
No, it was on the east side of High Street, of the square.
East of the square?
No, it wasn't east of the square, but if this is Main Street, and the Houder Grocery was right about there, and then there were several other stores south of that yet.
Oh, so in other words, it was right in the square, right south of the square, though.
Right south of the square.
On the east side of the road.
Right.
Okay, all right. What's there now, so we can?
I can't even think what's there right now.
Was it close to Tubasing's?
It was just a little bit north of the Tubasing store.
North of Tubasing's, probably where the drug stores were.
Yeah.
And that area. Okay. So it's in the middle of the block, between the Central School and Broad Street,
Yes,
on the east side of the road. That was the Houder Grocery.
that's right.
Do you remember much about the Houder Grocery store?
Oh, yeah. My dad worked in there all the time. In fact, he also delivered groceries out in the country. He had a horse and wagon.
Horse and wagon and delivered groceries. And did you ever work in the store?
No, I was too young for that.
Too young for that?
Yeah.
Did you ever go to the store to?
Oh, yeah.
What did you do in the store?
I liked to nose around and check out the candy counter, which
Did you
was
check that out pretty closely?
right in front of the store,
Right in
at
front.
the front of the store.
Do you remember any of the people who worked in the store?
Not real plainly anymore. You know, my father, of course, worked there, and Uncle Charlie worked there for a while too.
That's Uncle Charlie Houder.
Yes.
He is a brother of your father's, right?
Yes.
We have a picture of your dad, I believe, don't we? Yes, we have all of them. As a matter of fact, here we go. These are the Houders, and we have Letty, and that is
Charlie's wife,
Charlie's wife, and Martin,
my grandfather.
grandfather, and Amanda, your grandmother, and Charlie, then Charlie's wife, and then Harv, who was not married at the time, and your father, Fred.
Yes.
And we can see, I see the resemblance there. I remember your father, but I see a resemblance there, but wow, how much younger. I never knew him with that much hair.
Yeah.
He did have reddish hair, didn't he?
It was red.
And who else had red hair in your family?
I think Grandpa Houder's hair was originally red, but Harv and Charlie did not have red hair. I think Dad was about the only one of
But the other one
boys.
had red hair.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Grandpa Houder, as you remember him, and Grandma Houder. Houder, I'm sorry. Grandma Houder was a robust woman, wasn't she? A robust and nice, very nice, but strong, wasn't she? Very strong.
She was a member of the Mennonite church there, and she always got off to church on Sunday morning. Grandpa Houder was not much of a church person.
But she went to the Mennonite, was the first Mennonite church, right?
Yes.
Right there, where right now, which would at the corner, at that time was at the corner of North Pardee and Cottage Street.
Right.
Right, which is now an Episcopal church, but maybe 50 years from now won't be anything, you know.
Yeah.
So we have to always give a geographical location. But Grandma Houder went there, and she was a close friend of the Huntsbergers, was she not?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Tell us a little bit about that friendship.
Well, my memories with the two families don't go back too far.
75 years.
Yeah. Frank Huntsberger went there.
Frank Huntsberger would be Willard Huntsberger's father,
Yeah.
and we called him Dick Huntsberger.
Yeah.
He died at age 104, I believe, or 103 or 104. He's an old man, but he's still in good shape.
He always went down for his cup of coffee in the morning. He left his home there in High Street and would go down and scout out the town and find out what was new down there overnight.
And had little conversations with people.
Oh, yes.
Quite a talker, great man. Retired at age 50 because he thought he was going to die young, and he lived another 54 years.
Yes.
That's what we should do then. Maybe if we think we're going to die young, we'll live forever. How did Grandma Houder happen to be a Mennonite?
She was born out in the country west of town, and I don't know that that's how it started or
Probably
not.
so, because
Yeah.
that's where all the Mennonites landed. Do you remember
Yeah.
what her maiden name was?
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
Don't fret, we all have that same problem.
Yeah.
You know, no one who comes on this program is young.
Yeah.
And one of the things that all of us have is memory problems.
I am not sure whether it was Huntsberger or not, but I'm not positive of that at all.
But there was a strong relationship between the Huntsbergers and Grandma Houder.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Grandpa Houder. He was kind of a kindly old man, wasn't he?
Oh, yes. He would be in the store every night, of course, but on Saturday night, that was the night to hook up the horse and buggy and take off for the Portage Lakes. He went over there to fish every Saturday night. And
It was a long way off, too.
Yeah,
It's
it took a
15
long
miles one way.
Yeah.
And then on the way back, he would come back about what time?
I don't really have any remembrance of that. I suppose he came back for supper or something by that time. The store was not open on Sunday.
Oh, no, Sunday,
No.
nothing was open on
No.
Sunday ever. I mean, you couldn't,
No.
except maybe Brenny's, you know, just for prescriptions, and if, sometimes you could buy some other things, but they many times would have everything roped off because of the Sunday blue laws, right? What kinds of groceries do you remember being in the store? I mean, right now we have all kinds of frozen foods, and of course there weren't any. We had quick foods and salad bars and canned food. What do you remember about the store, the Houder store?
Well, it was a great place to go, and there were some stools in there where the loafers sat, and they always had a lot of
Do
conversation.
you remember who some of the loafers were at the time?
Not anymore.
Not anymore. But those one things that people would do. They would just go past the time at a store. My brother owned a repair garage, and even in a repair garage, he had regular people who would come about 4 o'clock at night and just sit and loaf all night long until the closing time.
Yeah, well, the closing time for the grocery store was late.
Very late, sometimes 11 o'clock, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was. And then there was a telephone in the store, and orders for groceries to be delivered came in that way, and that was when my dad took over and would load up the wagon and go deliver the groceries that people had ordered.
And do you remember some of the customers that they had out in the country?
Not anymore.
But there was horse and wagon that took them
yeah.
out there.
And it was cold as all get out when you'd have to take off to deliver groceries.
Do you remember what years those were?
Not with any degree of accuracy.
Well, it was in the 20s, though.
Yeah.
It was in the
And,
20s.
he would deliver north of Wadsworth past Clark's Corners. It was cold as all get out, and he'd still have to load up the wagon and go.
Well, he would deliver all the way out to Silver Creek, too.
Yeah, I imagine so.
And I'm not so sure that they went all the way to River Styx, but I think they went out to Acme Hill.
Did they?
I'm not really positive, but I think they did, because I remember some people talking about, that Fred Houder would bring the groceries or whatever, and I know that he went south a good deal.
Oh, yeah.
South a good deal. We had a neighbor, and of course she's been gone for many years. If she were living right now, she would probably be, let's see, 1885. She would be 13, 14 years old. And she used to talk about Fred Houder bringing groceries out there, and that was way out there in the farmlands of Silver Creek. Do you remember any of the employees of the store? I asked you that before, but do you remember any women who worked in the store?
No, they didn't have women.
They didn't have women working in the store, did they?
No.
The grocery stores were all men.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, almost all of the stores were all men. They might have, I don't know what they did with women's clothes. Did women work in the stores with women's clothes?
Well, Tuba's things at one time had female clerks.
But not...
Not a long ago time.
Yeah.
No.
So when you remember the store, the grocery store, it was certainly all of the men doing it. And you didn't go to the shelves to pick it up. You would just walk up there, and they would go pick it up for you.
And wait at the counter for it.
Yep, you had a counter, and you went up there, and I want a pound of flour and 2 pounds of oatmeal and whatever, and they would go and get it for you, wrap it up, and do you remember the barrels that were in the store?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Tell us what those barrels were like, and of course we couldn't do that today because of sanitation and all of that, but tell us about those barrels.
Well, they had pickles in them, for one thing, and I don't remember too much more what I suppose a lot of cornmeal and flour and dry things like that.
Surely they did. But you liked the candy.
Oh, yeah.
And tell us what kind of candy it was at that time. They didn't have Snickers and Milky Ways and things of that nature. What did they have?
Well, they had peppermint. They were pink. And they had white candy, just little things like that. And I think maybe the pink was wintergreen and the white were, I don't know. The white were peppermint.
How much candy you probably didn't have to pay for it, but how much candy could you get for a penny?
Oh, maybe 2 or 3 pieces.
2 or 3 pieces for a penny. And that's something. Now, no chocolate.
No.
No chocolate at all. A lot of reasons for that, too. Obviously, refrigeration was not anywhere close by at the time. How did they keep their meat cold?
I don't have any recollection of that at
You
all.
don't have any recollection? They did have meat, though, didn't they?
I imagine they did. I can't picture it anymore, just what they did have.
Well, from what other people have told us, they would get big blocks of ice and try to keep it cool that way. But it's very difficult to do that.
Yeah.
We'll come back to the store here in a minute because we've had so many people who've commented about the Houder store. But tell us a little bit about your early school days, where you went to school and who some of those people were and all of that.
Well, my first school was at Lincoln School.
Lincoln School, and you were there when Lincoln School was just about 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah.
And now in 1998, we probably have put our last class through there, or at least one of our last classes, because we're going to tear that down and build another school, or build another school and then tear it down. Do you remember it being a new school when you went in? Because it was built in 1915 and you went to school in 1923. So it was only, 8 or 9 years old when you went to school.
Well, I can remember some of the teachers.
Who were the teachers?
May Etter Rohr was one of them.
May Etter Rohr. And who were the Etters?
The Etters lived on West Street, and he was pastor of the Lutheran Church.
Dr. Etter, for many, many years. As a matter of fact, he died on the pulpit. And May Etter was a school teacher. And how does a Rohr come in?
Well, she married a Rohr. I forget what his first name was.
Pauline Thomas can tell us. I've forgotten his first name, and I know it too. I want to say Lloyd, but that isn't right. Well, anyway, Meredith Rohr, and she was the teacher, first grade teacher.
It seems to me, well, yeah, she probably was a first grade teacher.
And who were some of the other teachers then that you remember? This would have been in 1923, right?
Yeah.
21, 22, 23.
Boy, my memory shrinks on those.
Well, and who were some of the boys and girls you played with? Well, you probably didn't play with any boys. You weren't allowed to play
No.
with.
Well, Laura Parker and I were
Laura and Parker,
very good,
good friends.
Yeah, we usually walked to school together. And
Oh, we're talking about walking to school together on sidewalks?
no, I don't think they had sidewalks. I don't know if
No
we just
sidewalks.
walked
People
down.
cannot believe that we did not have sidewalks in Wadsworth at that time.
No.
The side of the road is where you walked. And of
Yeah.
course, there were no cars, almost no cars. You probably didn't see more than a dozen cars on the way to school in the morning, did you?
No, probably not.
And there were still some horses. Quite a few horses. as a
Oh,
matter of fact.
yeah.
Yeah, quite a few horses. Did you people have a car, or did you have a horse at your earliest days?
Well, we had a car.
Do you remember what kind it was?
It was a little Model T or
Model T?
Model T. Dad would have to get out and crank it.
Crank
to get
it?
started. And
I'm talking about cranking cars. Do you remember anything special that the men had to do when they cranked a car? How they had to hold their hand?
I know it was quite a trick. I
Yeah.
don't remember just what it was anymore.
Well, one of the things that they, you would think that you would hold the crank like this and just turn it, but you would have to hold your thumb underneath. So otherwise, if it kicked back, which it many times did, it wouldn't break your thumb off. And it would kick sometimes. The men would turn that thing and get it just so that it was at the combustion cycle, and then they would push it really hard, and it would usually start. Well, if it didn't start then, they would have to do it again, and sometimes again and again and again. It wasn't until later that we had the self-starter come in.
Oh,
So,
yeah. I can definitely remember
the cranking.
yes, the cranking.
It was quite a job sometimes.
Yeah, and when we would go out to visit some relatives west of town and have to go up the hill, we'd have to turn around and back up.
Back up, and tell us why we had to back up.
Well, I suppose the gasoline all ran, was that what it was?
I don't think so. I think that the reverse gear was a lower gear, and as a result of that, they had more power to go back up the hill.
Oh,
People can't even fathom the fact that a car would not have enough power to go up a hill, but the old Model T Fords had only about 24 horsepower as compared to some of our cars now with 145 to 50 to 60 horsepower. Who were the relatives you went to see out there west of town?
they were Kreiders.
Which Kreiders were they?
Elias was one, and he was blind.
And who were some of his children who are still around Wadsworth?
Alma Newcomer.
Alma Newcomer.
I talk with her quite often. Her sister Hilda died some time
Now,
ago.
how old is Alma now? She must be up in her 80s to 90s, isn't she?
No, she's a little bit younger than I am.
Oh, she younger?
A little bit. She was the youngest in the family. And
Who were the brothers in that Kreider family?
Lester,
Lester Kreider.
and I think he was the only brother.
And where did they live west of town?
At Blake, are you?
Blake, oh yes, I know
Yeah.
where it is, but I mean, tell us geographically so that we would know where that is.
It was west of town.
West of town, and then you would start going up the hill and you would turn north or right,
Yes.
and on what is now called River Styx Road, Route 49, and then you would go to the, first or second intersection and turn left?
I don't remember for sure just what that was, but
It would
we
go
would
west.
get to Blake, I know that.
And there would be, they lived on a big farm out there. As a matter of fact, all of them did.
Yeah.
Now, do you remember anything else about that old Model T car? You had mentioned something which I'm so glad you brought out, Wilma, the fact that you go to Acme Hill and you would have to turn around and back up the hill. In the very, very early 30s, we have a hill which is right in front of our house right now, but we weren't living in there at the time. And the old Model A cars sometimes couldn't make that hill, and they would turn around and back up the hill. And it was a fairly frequent kind of thing. We wouldn't even think about that today, but that was a fairly frequent occurrence. Do you remember the condition of the road in going out to Acme Hill in the early 20s?
Not real vividly. It was narrow, of course.
And was it paved?
Maybe brick.
Only one side, though.
Yeah.
And one side was brick. I still remember that. One side was brick and the other side was. And do you remember the big railroad ties that they had to have to go up because it would wash out so much down there?
I don't recall it.
Don't remember those things? And tell us a little bit, let's go back to your school now. You were at Lincoln School. Do you remember who the principal was? Did they have a principal?
Probably, but I don't remember.
And do you remember some of the boys that you played with or talked to or maybe had a crush on or whatever? Of course, you don't have to admit it.
I just don't have any remembrance of
Don't have any remembrance of those kinds of things. Then from the fifth grade, was it, or sixth grade that you went from there to the central school?
I believe it was fifth.
Fifth grade.
But I could be wrong.
And then do you remember coming to this huge school, the central school?
Oh, yes.
And what was that like? What was your first impression when you walked into this building?
This was scary.
Scary.
Yeah.
You probably had never been into the building until such time that you went there.
Yeah.
I mean, the attitude that people have now that, we just walk through buildings and so forth, you just didn't do those kinds of things. You remember some of your teachers and friends here, at the Central Middle School now, which is at the junior high and high school?
Well, Mr. Work was the fourth or third grade teacher.
Mr. Work was the third grade teacher. Now, you're the first person who remembers Mr. Work as a teacher. Everyone else remembers him as the principal, but he was a teacher.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about Mr. Work in his younger days when he had a lot of hair, well, not a lot of hair, but he had darker hair.
Well, he was pretty quiet, and I was scared to death of him.
Why were you scared of him?
Oh, I don't know.
He was a kindly old fellow.
Yeah, maybe it was because he was so big.
He was big. He was about 6'3", 4", something like that. He's a big man. And tell us a little bit about his teaching techniques.
Well, he taught arithmetic mostly, and arithmetic was hard for me.
Hard for a lot of people, right? But he did a good job of it.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember then when he was made principal?
Not with any degree of accuracy.
Right. Do you remember any other teachers who were there?
Oh, May Eder. Did I mention her?
Yeah, she was at Lincoln, though.
Yeah, I was thinking she came down to Central, but maybe not.
Well, it's entirely possible. They moved them around. And do you remember anybody else? Do you remember any friends that you made new there? You had already gone with the Parker girls, but...
Well, I forget when the students from Central High School came
Ninth grade.
Ninth grade. And I remember that transition.
And do you remember, did you make friends with some of those people?
Oh, yeah.
And who were some of the ones that you made friends with?
I didn't realize my memory had gone this bad.
Oh, no, it's a good memory. You can remember a lot of things. Well, if you think of one, we'll come back to that.
Right now,
and
I can't.
You graduated probably, let's see if my arithmetic would be right, probably 1934?
Right.
1934. Do you remember your graduation?
Yes, I do, and I think I have some 1930.
Oh, my, you have a...
Let's see. Here's the class roll.
The class roll. Oh, boy.
Let's see what else I've got in here.
I think I know just about every one of these people. Well, look at this. This was all of Wadsworth, really. It was all of Wadsworth at that time. We can't show this. Well, we might be able to show it a little bit here, because was this this was your graduation class. Oh, and your graduation diploma. And let's show that 1934 graduation diploma. And the J.B. Hilliard was the president of the board. Roy Dick from the hardware store was a member. H.W. Tubasing, who was a merchant.
Yeah.
And J.R. Crossan and Mary Miller Donna Bergner, who was the clerk of the board, she was on our program. You know, she's past 90 now.
Yes.
She was Donna Lind. Frank Close, who was the superintendent, and C.J. Mayhew was the principal. That 1934, and you've kept this, haven't you? Just very, very nice. Do you remember the speaker at the graduation?
I don't think that they brought in people for the speaker to graduation. Frank Close would usually.
He gave a little talk.
Yeah.
That happened all the way through the 40s. The graduation in the 40s were also that way with Frank Close. He's a very good speaker, too.
Yes.
Very good speaker. A little bit of a fellow, but robust.
Yes.
But a very good speaker. 1934 was a bad year for finances. Do you remember it?
Yes.
Tell us about it.
Well, I don't know where to start.
You don't know where to start. Things were not good, were they? We had a horrible depression.
Yeah.
Did you have a job right after you got out of school?
Right after I got out of high school, I had the good fortune of moving in with my aunt and uncle in Akron and got to go to Akron U for 2 years.
Oh, great, great. Who were your aunt and uncle there?
Elno Wall, who was my mother's brother, and his wife, Ruth.
Ruth Wall and Elno. Let's talk, and let's come back to that in a second, but while we have the Walls on the line here, tell us about the Walls and their family and where they fit into the Wadsworth scene.
Well, my grandparents' Wall lived kind of at the end of the road. My mind. That's where my mother and her brother grew up.
End of which road, though?
The road straight south of town.
Yeah, south of town,
Yeah.
On what we now call Mount Eaton Road, which was
Yeah.
548 at that time. And who are some of the relatives of the Walls that are still in Wadsworth?
Practically none. There's one granddaughter, Luann, I can't think of her name now, but she and her husband have a business down south of town. She's the only Wall in town right now that I know of.
What about some of the Wall nieces and nephews? Do you are any of those around?
Not in Wadsworth, no.
And what is significant about the Walls down south of town?
Well, my grandfather Wall had a large farm on the west side of the road. And of course, the Wall homestead, I guess I don't have a picture. No, I couldn't find a picture of that. It was on the east side of the road. It was a very large brick house. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah, sure.
And there was an older house that set back of the brick house. That was the original house, I think, on that site. I remember there was.
Now, Twyla Lee is related to the Walls,
Yeah,
isn't she?
yeah. Yeah, her husband and my mother were cousins.
Yes, Dwight and your mother were first cousins, right? She's still in town.
Yes.
The Walls then also have a road named after them, Wall Road,
Yeah.
Which runs from 548 or Mount Eaton Road all the way to Silver Creek Road, then jogs north for about half mile or better, and then goes farther east to the Medina County Line Road. That's all Wall Road. Now, they were not necessarily involved with that road, but they named it because of that huge expanse of farm that they had. I don't know how many acres, but I think they had more than, well, they didn't have a full square, which would be 640 acres, but they had a huge farm out there. And the brick house is
Still there, yeah.
beautiful, beautiful old home, just a gorgeous home. Coming back then to your day after graduation, and you went to Akron. What did you study at the university?
I took a secretarial course.
And do you remember who some of the teachers were there at the University of Akron? Of course, it was not anything close to what it is now. It was a municipal university at that time.
I probably have some records at home that would have
1934 probably didn't have more than 1,000 people. Now they have 23,000. When I was there, we were up to 31,000 people. And then they closed the evening college down, which was unfortunately a mistake, as they understand, but we lost a lot of people because they didn't feel that they could support that anymore. But we had a huge evening group that came there. Did you work anywhere while you were there in Akron?
Well, I had a part-time job at the university.
And what kind of money did you make at the university?
Oh, I don't remember anywhere.
Probably just pennies an hour,
Yeah,
25 cents an hour, if that.
Yeah.
And what did you do, kind of a student assistant?
Yes, for the evening school.
And for the evening college. I was dean of the evening college then for many, many years after that, but not in 1934,
No.
obviously.
And
You remember who that was? Could that be Mr. Dr. Duryea?
I don't remember that name, but Georgia Chamberlain was head of she had some responsibility with the evening college, and I was her student assistant.
Isn't that something? Where was the evening college at that time?
Oh, it was on the main floor of Bookville College.
Bookville College, or Bookville Hall, that's right. And do you remember any men involved with the evening college at the time? Laurel
Harding.
Harding?
Les Harding.
Les Harding?
Yeah. He was George's boss, I think. And then, I can't recall anymore the other people that were there in Bookville Hall.
Who was the president at the time?
Simmons.
Dr. Heselton Simmons, who was a chemist. Did you get a job then, excuse me, after you left the University of Akron?
Yes, I first got a job in a law office downtown Akron, and that was a little unhandy, so I later had a job at the Ohio Match in the office.
Now we're coming here back to Wadsworth.
Yeah.
Well, for whom did you work at the Ohio Match?
Oh, Miss Goss.
Miss Goss. Tell us about Miss Goss. And she didn't have a first name, did she? It was just Miss, right?
Yes, mostly. She did have a first name. I don't recall what it is. But I was...
Well, no one called her by her first name.
No. But anyway, Mr. Crumrine had called...
Which Crumrine would this be?
The one on Highland Avenue. I can't remember.
Bob?
No, I don't think it was Bob. I can't remember his first name. But he called one evening. I was at home, of course, yet. And he said that they had an opening and would I be interested in. And that's when I became Ethel Goss's right-hand person. And,
Tell us a little bit about her.
well, she talked all the time. And, she was very knowledgeable. She was an accountant, I think. She had a lot of responsibility in that respect. Mr. Crumrine was an executive there at that time. Bill Simister also was at the match company at that time. And I didn't stay too long. That was about the time that the war started, and I was anxious to get into war work. And I had a friend who worked had a good job at Goodyear Aircraft, and so he hired me as his secretary.
Wow, who was the friend?
Brad Ferris.
Brad Ferris, not from Wadsworth.
No. And I stayed with that job until the end of the war.
Somewhere along the line, you did something else. What really great event happened in the 40s?
Well, got married.
You got married?
Yeah.
And whom did you marry?
Elmer.
Elmer Dockus, right. Tell us a little bit about Elmer Dockus.
Well, Elmer was a child of a large family in Copley.
Big family.
Yeah.
Big family in Copley. They're all over the place.
Yeah. And in those days, the girls and the fellows both would go down to the YMs to dance, and that's where I happened to meet Elmer.
In Akron. On probably on High Street, and YM was on High Street, wasn't it?
Yeah, and the YW was on...
I'm sorry, the YM was on, not on High Street. The YW was on High Street.
Yeah.
And the YM was on Water Street. Yeah.
And the thing that all the kids in Wadsworth did was go to Akron on Saturday night to those dances.
To the Y dances.
Yeah.
How'd you get there?
Oh, I drove.
You drove. You had a car then.
Yeah.
What kind of car was it?
A Dodge.
What year?
Oh, heavens, I don't know. It was old.
It was an old Dodge?
Yeah.
And when did you learn how to drive? And did you go to driver's ed?
I learned to drive early. My grandfather Walls wanted me to start driving. He had some kind of an old Chevy or something. And he had a friend on Locust Street in Akron, and we would go over to Locust to visit his friends. And on the way home, on what is now 261, why, I got to drive.
And how old were you when you were driving?
Not very old.
And did you have a license?
No.
Why not?
They didn't have them.
They didn't have them.
No.
People can't understand that either. Licenses did not come into play until 1937. So people could drive anywhere. A lot of stories like yours, just get in the car and drive.
Yeah.
Did you ever have, God forbid, an accident?
No.
No, because you're very careful and you learn to drive sensibly and not fast ever and all those other kinds of things, because the old timers would, well, first of all, the cars didn't go very fast.
No.
But it's very difficult for our people to understand now that a car that went 45 miles an hour was going pretty fast, and 55 was almost unheard of for some of the cars. But 30, 35, 40 miles an hour is just about it for some of the cars. You could drive them faster, but it was just like breakneck. I mean, the car would shake and everything else. Do you remember how you met Elmer Dockus?
Well, he was at the dance there that
And he
time.
was a copy from the copy at the time, though, right?
He'd just gotten out of the service. He was in the Navy.
And tell us a little bit about Elmer's family. You say you have a big family. How big is the Dockus family?
I think there were almost 15 kids.
15 kids, right? And they're all over Akron, all over Wadsworth, all over Copley. Everywhere you go, there's a Dockus somewhere. How did you end up here in Wadsworth? Where were you married?
We were married at Grace Lutheran.
Grace Lutheran Church. And did he want to come to Wadsworth right away, or did that have to be a little bit of a coaxing job for you?
No, I don't think so. I'm trying to think what his first job was. I don't remember anymore. But my father had a tile building just north of our house. And when he found out we were going to be married, he started into remodeling. And so we had a nice home to move into at that time.
A tile building.
A tile building.
It wasn't very big, though, was it?
No.
No, but it was a cute little thing.
Yeah.
It's not there anymore.
Yes, it is. It's got stucco on it
Oh,
now.
okay. They've changed the.
Yeah.
They changed it then.
Yeah, we have tenants in it now. It's rented all the time.
Is that right?
Yeah. And
I didn't realize it was. That's the same tile building. I thought the tile building was knocked down and they put a new one up there. That's the same one.
it's, as far as I can remember, it was the same one, but it had the plaster stucco on it.
Did they expand it?
A little bit, but my son and his wife live in there now, and we lived in there till we had 3 kids. And,
Wow. I didn't think it was that big.
well, it was crowded.
It was crowded, but it was cozy.
Yeah.
It was cozy. Elmer did what in his lifetime? What kind of work?
It was always shop work, and he had a job in, I forget where it was, but he didn't stay very long, and he got a job at a high injector, and he stayed the rest of his career there.
The rest of his career. Doing what?
It was a factory job, and I don't recall exactly what it was anymore. Yeah.
Well, he made a good name for himself. He was a very fine worker, a good upstanding citizen, and everyone knew him, everyone liked him. Elmer Dockus, I mean, if anyone were to say, give this to Elmer, you would know which Elmer was going to be. Children, you have at least one son, but how many more besides that?
2 more sons.
2 more sons.
3 in all.
Tell us about those sons and where they are right now.
The oldest, Fred, is married and lives next door.
Fred was named after your father.
Yeah. And
When you say next door, tell us where you're living right now, geographically.
on High Street, 509 High Street.
Same place where? It's not the same place where you've lived all your life. I mean,
no, the old house.
Yeah, right.
No, that we outgrew that.
Right.
And
You live in about a quarter of a mile north of 261.
about, yeah.
Yeah. And on the corner of what street? Good, near Good, isn't it?
The 505 High Street is right on the corner of the Akron Road.
Oh, right on the corner.
It's the first building, the house, just above the convenience store.
Yeah, okay, all right. Okay, it's not a quarter of a mile then, just
No.
a few hundred feet. All right, I was mistaken on that, I'm sorry, okay. And you and Elmer lived there all that time, all your married life?
We lived in the new house. We built a new house between the old house and my folks' house.
But that's 505 then?
The old house, the original house is 505.
Okay, but you don't live in 505 anymore?
No, we
That's
live at
what-
509.
Oh, 509, so it's the next house up. And at one time, very close by there, oh mercy, his name now, he married one of the Simmons girls, oh mercy, the brick house right, I can't think of his name. Who were the neighbors right there? Name some of them.
On High Street
Yes,
there. Dummy.
I can't remember his name right now, and he married one of the Simmons girls, and I know his name as well as my own, but they built a beautiful home there, that brick home. Well,
The brick house on the corner was where the Parkers lived.
yes, right, but
Okay.
the
And the old house is where my folks lived,
yes, and then the next one is
where we lived.
where you live, and then
Yeah.
who's the next one?
Well, that's where my son lives, in the little,
The
house.
next regular house, the big
Yeah.
house.
Well, those are all apartments on upstreet.
Yeah, from there, but I can't think of his name. It'll come to me a little bit. The times that you were involved with, well, shall we say, the store brought you downtown. The times that you were involved in working the match shop brought you downtown. What brought you downtown after you were married and you were no longer working?
Well, we had grocery stores in town then.
And now which grocery stores did we have in town then?
Well, it was Overholt and Freeburn for one.
Right.
And there were hardware stores, the Prince Hardware Store.
And you shopped at them. But you never worked downtown after that, did you?
No.
No. You were a stay-at-home mom, as we would call you now,
Yeah.
right? A stay-at-home mom. And do you remember some of the activities that you were involved in, particularly at church? Because you're very active.
Well, I always belonged to the women's organization.
The women's organization, which is called the Wadsworth Women's Club, right?
No, Wadsworth Women's Club is not a church organization.
Oh, the women's club but you belong to the Wadsworth Women's Club, don't you?
Yeah.
Yes. But you mean the women's club of the church?
Yes.
Okay. And what other kinds of things did you do at the church?
Well, I'm trying to think back what I did do. I went to Sunday school,
Yeah.
too. Took my kids to that. And
What about dinners and things like that?
oh yeah, we were always involved in that.
And always involved with dinners. You're one of the mainstays for the dinners, weren't you?
Oh, I don't think so.
They don't think you're a mainstay?
No.
Oh, I thought,
The Luther League was, when I was still single, that went on for a long time after that.
but you've always been very, very close to the church.
Yeah.
Yeah, very close to the church. Tell us a little bit more about the three kids. Tell us where they are now and what they're doing and all that.
Excuse me. Fred, the oldest, is 60. He's married to a girl named Carol. And they live in this small house just north of us.
And Carol's not from Wadsworth, though.
No. And
Or wasn't originally from, she is now.
Yeah, not originally from Wadsworth, no. And Mark, the second son, is 2 years younger than Fred. He's married and has 3 children, and they live on out east of Akron in Randolph. He has his own trucking business, and that keeps him pretty busy. The third son, Alan, is 3 years younger than Mark. He lives in Medina. He's married, no children. And he works for Ford Motor in, north of Medina there. I forget which company, which branch it is right now. So they're all employed and doing pretty well.
And Elmer left us 3 years ago, didn't he?
3 years. Mm-hmm.
And he had a long siege of, I remember asking about him and hearing about him, but he had a long siege of Parkinson's, did he not? That's too bad. Good person. How old was he when he passed on?
He's 3 years younger than I am, and he's been gone. No, he's not 3 years younger than I. Oh, without looking it up, I can't remember.
Well, it's in the close to 80.
Yeah.
Close to 80 years of age. And tell us what you're doing right now, how you're occupying your time.
Well, this summer, I gardened the whole summer. I had a pretty busy garden. And I go to the Women's Club of Wadsworth and also the Women's Club of Lutheran Church. And just the regular things, grocery shopping and so forth and so on.
Everything that everyone else does.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the earlier days in Wadsworth. You don't remember anything at all about living in the South End, right?
No.
No.
I was an infant when I came.
Infant when you came. Then your father then built that house in the 5 acres up there, which is now, of course, you're still living.
Menoir, yeah.
And Menoir and all of that place. Do you remember the transaction when the Mennonite Church bought Menoir? And could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I've got the papers at home yet. I could give it to you in detail. I don't remember too much about it.
Before we go any further, we have to say what Menoir is. That's a housing development for older people, designed and constructed by the Mennonite Church about, 30 years ago?
Approximately.
30 years
I don't know
ago.
it's quite that old, but maybe.
And it's a lovely, lovely place for older people to live. Okay, I'm sorry. Tell us about the transaction. From whom did they buy it, and do you remember being involved?
I remember the pastor of the church, and I can't recall his name right now.
Tall, young, red hair.
Brought the proposition to my father, and they considered it for quite a while, and the price was right, and so Dad decided that he didn't need that much farmland anymore anyway. So that's when the Mennonite Church purchased it.
Do you think that was there a Mennonite connection at that time?
My father was a
Mennonite, right? And it was that. I'm trying to think. It was a German name. It'll come to me a second. You can picture him. He was young, very articulate, tall, thin, forward-thinking, reddish hair, not too much of it, kind of thinning.
Steelberg?
Steelberg, Reverend Steelberg, that's right, yeah, that's right, exactly, Steelberg. And do you think that he approached your father because of the location or because of the relationship between your father and the Mennonite Church?
I think it was some of both.
A little bit of both, right? So they did sell that then to the Menoir Corporation. And do you remember when they did this, the feelings that your father had in giving up that part of land? Or was it, go ahead.
He was glad to be rid of the
work.
The work, yeah. He was already an old man, and it was just too much for him to carry on.
When did your father pass away?
At age 100 in
1990. Age 100. Fred Houder lived to be 100 years old. Your mother, unfortunately, was a little bit younger than that. When did she pass away?
Can't tell you with any degree of accuracy.
But it's
quite a while after.
30 years ago, at least.
Yeah.
Your dad, in his later years, Fred was what? Able to take care of himself, but not in the best of shape. Is that right?
He came. He made a decision that he was ready to come live with us. And it worked out fine.
There was no problem.
No problem. He was the easiest man in the world to get along
Well,
with.
of course, he was that way all his life, too. Just a very wonderful person. Do you remember the, I guess, the changes that had to come in your house when your dad moved in?
Not too many. We had an extra bedroom at that time, and he just moved in and was happy to be there. He never,
And didn't bother you, your husband, or anything like that?
no.
Toward his later years, was he able to get around?
With great difficulty.
Yeah. He didn't come into town at all after, what, age 90 or so?
No, not really. We used to occasionally be able to get him in the car and take him for a ride, and he enjoyed that. But we had a wheelchair for him, which he was able to tool around in. And he was an ideal
Ideal patient. Oh, that's wonderful. That's so good. One more question about the store. Well, more than one question about the store. What happened to the store? Was it sold? What happened?
I don't have any recollection of that either.
None at all. But your dad didn't run the store in the after the 30s or 40s, did he?
No. My Uncle Charlie more or less took over the store.
And go ahead.
And Dad found other jobs. I forget
And
just what they were.
what kind of work did he do then?
Well, I think he worked for the gas station there for a while.
Which gas station?
The one on just east of.
Broad Street, the Ohio station at the time. Fred, that's where I remember him from there. The store is no longer there. When did the store close down?
I don't have any recollection of that.
Do you remember it being there after you graduated from high school?
Probably.
And do you remember it when you went to University of Akron?
I don't remember anymore about
Okay,
downtown
and do you remember it when you came back?
No.
So it was somewhere in the very late 30s, early 40s, is that right, when it was closed down? They went from horses to what, though?
Well, we did have a bus once in a while in town.
No, I mean the store, from delivering with groceries to...
Oh, well, I guess they had a truck that they...
And what was the truck like? Do you remember it?
Oh, it was about a Model T Ford or something like that. I don't know for sure anymore. I don't have that much.
It was a classic old truck.
Oh, was it?
Oh, yes, everyone remembers it, yes. Well, at least I remember it because I love old cars, absolutely love them. Too poor to buy one, but I'm so poor I have to buy a new car. I can't buy an old car.
Yeah, they do run.
Oh, boy, they're very, very expensive. But I remember it was not a Model, I think it was a Model A, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Someone will remember that. Do you remember, talking about the store again, do you remember the other grocery stores in town, particularly competitors of your fathers in the 30s and the 20s?
Well, the Overholt and Freeburn.
Across the street.
Yeah.
And down a little bit.
Yeah. And Lorenz had a grocery store.
North of the square on where the city hall, well, not where the city hall is now, but where the city hall was.
North of the intersection there. And that's about...
Well, then Mo had his store there, too.
Who?
Mosher.
Oh, yeah.
Mosher. Mo, I guess.
It was a kind of an Acme.
Yeah, Acme store. And then the Kroger store
Yeah,
on the south side of College Street, and the A&P store, which is up in South College. So we had downtown Wadsworth, right there within walking distance of, 4 blocks, we had 5 grocery stores.
Yeah.
All of them were very, very busy, and all of them were very, very good. One other question, we're going to run out of time if I don't get all these questions asked of you. When you graduated from high school and you then went to the University of Akron, did you meet any other friends in Akron or at the university with whom you're still in contact, and do those people live in Wadsworth?
I have one longtime friend who lives, she's widowed too, and she lives in Talmage, and we're on the phone frequently.
And you remember her name?
Marcine Otzenhofer.
Marcine Otzenhofer. Wilma Dockus, you have brought a tremendous amount of these wonderful old memories to Wadsworth, to us today. We're so grateful that you would take some time to do this, not only on your own, from the Houder family, but from the Dockus family, and from every way that you can possibly think. We are so blessed to have had you as part of our Wadsworth heritage, and we thank you for coming today.
Well, I thank you. I've enjoyed it very much.